Hello, this is Mr. White. I'm going to be reading through this Google slide presentation here on the cell cycle or cell division. This is based on Chapter 5, Lesson 3, which you can find on page 172 of your textbook. So the cell cycle is a cycle of stages that cells pass through to allow them to divide and produce new cells. It is sometimes referred to as the cell division cycle for that reason. New cells are born through the division of their parent cell, producing two daughter cells from one single parent cell. Cell cycle. It's the regular sequence of growth and division that cells undergo. Interphase. The first stage of the cell cycle before they divide. Cells make copies of DNA and prepare to divide. Replication. When cells make exact copies of DNA. Chromosome. The thread-like structures formed from DNA and proteins. Mitosis. The second stage of the cell cycle, where the cell's nucleus divides into two new nuclei, and one set of DNA is distributed into each daughter cell. Cytokinesis. This begins during mitosis, when the cell splits into two daughter cells. What are the functions of cell division? How do lizard eggs turn into lizards? Cell division allows an organism to grow larger. One cell splits into two, they split, those cells split, and then you have a multicellular organism, or an organism with many cells. Cell division allows for growth. Suppose you break your leg during a skateboarding accident. Cell division replaces the damaged cells with healthy new ones. The same happens as your body fights off a disease. Cell division allows for repair. Some organisms can reproduce through cell division. An amoeba reproduces this way. Most organisms, like human beings, reproduce when two separated cells from parents combine to form a new cell. The cell undergoes many divisions to grow into a new organism. Cell division allows for reproduction. What is the cell cycle? Now that we understand that three functions of cell division are growth, repair, and reproduction, we will learn how this happens through the cell cycle. During the cell cycle, a cell grows, prepares for division, and divides into two new cells, which are called daughter cells. The cell cycle has three main phases that we will learn about. They are called interphase, mitosis, and cytokinesis. Interphase. Interphase is the first stage before cell division is going to happen. During this time, cells will grow, make copies of their DNA, and prepare to divide into two new cells. Growing. Cells will grow to their full size while producing needed organelles. Organelles are specialized structures that are in a cell. Organelles work similar to organs, where they have a job to do in the cell. Examples of organelles are the nucleus or chloroplast. Cells also make more mitochondria, ribosomes, and enzymes. Enzymes are produced to help speed up chemical reactions in living things. Copying DNA. After the cell is full grown, it will begin the process of copying its DNA. DNA holds all information that a cell needs to carry out its functions. The cell makes the copy in the nucleus. This is called replication. A replication is an exact copy of something. In the nucleus, DNA and proteins form chromosomes. At the end of replication, there will be two identical sets of chromosomes. Preparing for division. After the cell has been replicated, it prepares to divide. It will form two new cells. The process is a little different depending on if it is a plant or animal cell. In an animal cell, a pair of centrioles is duplicated. This does not happen in a plant cell. A centriole is an organelle found in animal cells that helps it to divide. Mitosis. The second stage of the cell cycle begins after interphase is over. The second stage of the cell cycle is mitosis. During this stage, the cell's nucleus will divide in two. One set of DNA is given to each new nucleus. Although mitosis is the second stage of the cell cycle, it is divided into 4 phases: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Prophase. Chromosomes come together into shapes that can be viewed with a microscope. Looking at the illustration to the right, you can see the chromosomes inside the nucleus along with the chromatids. The chromosomes are shaped like rods. These rod-shaped parts are called chromatids. Each chromatid is an exact copy of one another. A centromere holds the chromatids together until a later phase when they will begin to move apart. This is a busy phase. Along with being able to view the chromosomes, spindle fibers will begin to form in the cell. The spindle fibers bridge together both ends of the cell. Metaphase. Each chromosome attaches to a spindle fiber in the centromere in the middle of the cell, pushing the nucleus out of the way. The centromere contains specific DNA in random sequences. Anaphase. This is where the separation begins. The centromere of each chromosome splits. This pulls the chromatids apart. Now the chromatids become a chromosome. Once the chromosome gets to the side of the cell, it's time to move on to telophase. Telophase. The division is finishing up. The cell membrane begins to close in and splits the cell into 2 pieces. There are now 2 separate cells. Each cell has half the DNA in it. Cytokinesis. This is the last stage of the cell cycle. It starts to take place during mitosis, during telophase. During this time, the cytoplasm divides. Each new cell now has an identical set of chromosomes, with half the organelles from each parent cell. At the end of this phase, the cell then goes back into interphase, and the cell cycle starts all over. Cytokinesis is different in animal cells than in plant cells. The major difference is that in animal cell, the cell membrane will squeeze around the middle of the cell, allowing the cytoplasm to divide into 2 cells. In a plant cell, the cell wall is too rigid to do the same. Instead, a cell plate forms across the middle of the cell. The cell plate will form a cell membrane between the 2 cells. Then the cell wall will form where the cell membrane is. Here we have a picture of each of the stages. You have interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And then once they actually split apart into 2 new cells, you have cytokinesis. So here's the cell cycle altogether. We have interphase. Remember, this is where the cell is growing and developing. This is where the cell will spend most of its time. Most of it will be in interphase. Once it has grown and developed and is ready to start splitting, it'll start mitosis, which begins with prophase. This is when things start condensing together. You can start seeing the little rod-shaped chromosomes, spindle fibers start forming. Step 3, metaphase. Everything sort of lines up down the middle there. Then step 4, anaphase. The spindle fibers have attached to the chromosomes and they pull them apart, split them in half down the middle, take them to opposite ends of the cell. Then we move on to telophase. And those 2 halves, membranes start to form. They get ready to split, and once they actually split into 2 new cells, that's cytokinesis. And each of those new cells will then go immediately into the first phase, interphase, and they'll begin to grow and develop, and the cell cycle will start all over again.